Hi everyone, Sasha with Bath and Granite. Thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about seams and vein direction on natural stone products. So I drew up here a quick little mock kitchen. It's a 12 by 10, really common size in the Colorado area. And I've got us a slab here. It's 12.5 by 6 feet. This is something we'd consider a pretty large slab. So the question is, how do we make the seams look? And this question is particularly important with stone that has directional veins, right? So imagine that these lines that I'm drawing are veins in the stone, and they all run left to right. For the most part, in a lot of stones, the direction of the veins will run in one direction, but some stones it'll actually kind of go 3/4 of the way through the slab and then decide it's changing direction with the grain. So that happens pretty often. But if we've got a straight direction like this, pretty common for a white marble, how do we set it up in the kitchen? The challenge comes up in the fact that we've got 10 feet on this side, 12 feet on this side, and we want to be able to cut them out of, we want to cut that entire L shape out of the same slab. Just like it is in the kitchen, we want to cut that L out in the slab. But the problem is that this is 10 feet long, and our short dimension is 6 feet long, right? So we have no choice but to cut the 12-foot dimension out of here. And there's no material, there's no slabs, as far as I've ever seen, that are 10 feet, 12 feet by 10 feet. So we end up cutting the slabs like this. We're going to have a 12-foot slab like this, 12 feet by 2 feet. It's going to take up almost the entire length of the slab. And then the next piece that we'll throw in, it's going to be like this. There will be a seam here. And this ends up being 8 feet long. So then we've got 8 feet by 2 feet. 8 feet by 2 feet. So when we cut these pieces out of the stone, they're side by side and the veins are running in the same direction. But when we rotate one of them, the veins are now running in perpendicular directions, right? So the veins are running like this. And then they're running like this. And where they meet, it becomes extremely obvious that there's a seam. So it's unattractive. The question becomes, how do we deal with it? Because it's unavoidable when the short side of the kitchen is longer than the short side of the slab. Or even the long side of the slab. So there's a few different ways of tackling this problem, and with good kitchen design, you would actually probably have a stove right here, something to break up the space so that the veins do change direction, but not in a contiguous line. So I'd like for us to look at a pretty high-end bathroom, just a bathroom that I found online. It's got a lot of veins going on here, and we can see all three solutions to the challenge at hand. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think what is the most obvious vein, which is right here on the lip of the bathtub. Maybe it's not, it's the most obvious to me, but maybe these back veins are more obvious to other folks. This vein right here, what did they do? They did absolutely nothing. So that's always an option. It's not preferable, but sometimes it's just not feasible to do any kind of vein matching at all. Maybe because installation would prevent us from being able to carry in a piece big enough, or there isn't enough material, or it's just not doable for design purposes, right? But installation is actually, in this specific instance, because this is such a high-end bathroom, they probably had to cut this entire top piece out of one section of stone. and it was just unavoidable. It looks like they couldn't have done it any differently. So for installation reasons, they just cut it off. So that's always an option. The other option is actually to change colors. So if this really bothers you right here, this change of direction, we'd want you to switch to a non-directional stone. So some stones have more grainy patterns rather than directional veins. So those stones would be something like an Ubatuba or a Santa Cecilia or Giallo Ornamental, or something like Steel Black, Imperial White. All of those are natural stones where they're more grainy and not directional. Or another possibility would be to go to quartz, where it's much more consistent because it's a man-made product. So the next possible fix here is a continuation of one highly visible element. So if we look at the floor here, it looks like they've got one vein running through here, and this is clearly multiple slabs. So what they did was they found the most, whatever's drawing your eye the most, the brightest, the darkest, the vein going through, and they matched it up to that. Meaning all these other spots right here, so we see like a black spot kind of running into nothing, and then we've got this darker area kind of running into a lighter area with no similar veins. This is what draws our eye. This, I'd say, is the most common approach with directional kitchens, materials rather. So in this case, we would have found an area in the slab where maybe it's kind of vertical, right? It's kind of vertical and it kind of runs like this maybe. Oops. Kind of like this. And then we'd see if we can find a piece in this slab where it's like this, and then maybe it turns a little bit like this. And then we'd have a continuation. And even though we still have these directional veins running like this, because there's this continuation, it makes it seem much more fluid. The eye is drawn to the continuation rather than the change in direction. The third possibility is called book matching. This is definitely a very bright way of doing things, because rather than using the seam as a weakness, you're now pointing it out as a strength. You're saying, well, the seam here is by design. We put the seam here intentionally. We want you to notice it, and it's there to look cool. So in that case, what we would do is line them up and probably cut them at a 45 so that this seam would go more like this. You can't cut to a complete V because the corners there tend to break off. But we can cut to something like this. And then we can have the veins meet up at a 45. And they really run into each other. And then we go this way. Right, so we can manipulate the material on the slab to make it look super obvious where the seam is turning, and that's called book matching. So this is a really high-end bathroom. This could easily have been, this is an expensive material. This is probably $50,000 to $100,000 worth of stonework in this bathroom, because each slab of this material may have cost the customer $5,000 or $6,000. This is a high-end marble. But what I love about it is that it shows all three possibilities. Do nothing. This is natural stone, and that's the beauty of natural stone, is that it's got variation, right? A continuation of one line, even though there's other elements that don't match up, or the book matching. Those are really our three options, and we incorporate all three into what we do at Bath & Granite. Now, this kind of bathroom isn't something we would actually tackle. This is a project we would turn down. This is what I would consider the next level of service. So everything that we sell, we're at this in-between ground where we offer more service, better selection than you'd find at Home Depot, Lowe's. But we're not one of these custom shops that's going to do everything like shower walls. That's not stonework that we take on. nor are we able to take on the amount of service required to have created the design that this customer probably had envisioned in their mind. So that's the difference between us and Home Depot. But we do have all the technology to make this happen in kitchen countertops, which is our focus, kitchen countertops. If you have any questions, stop in the store or talk to any of our folks.